Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of First Maccabees, the 10th chapter. In the 160th year, Alexander, the son of Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, went up and took Ptolemais, for the people had received him, by means whereof he reigned there. So this Alexander, when you look him up, is in secular history is known by the name Alexander Ballas. Alexander. There you go. So it says here, Alexander the First, Theopater Euergetes, surnamed Ballas, was the ruler of the Seleucid Empire from 150 BC to August 145 BC. Picked from obscurity and supported by the neighboring Roman allied kingdom of Pergamon, Alexander landed in Phoenicia in 152 BC and started a civil war against Seleucid king Demetrius I Soter. So his claim was he was the son of Antiochus, and so he had right to the throne since Antiochus had sat on the throne at one point, Antiochus Epiphanes. Backed by mercenaries and factions of the Seleucid Empire, unhappy with the existing government, he defeated Demetrius and took the crown in 150 BC. He married the princess Cleopatra Thea to seal an alliance with the neighboring Ptolemaic kingdom. His reign saw the steady retreat of the Seleucid Empire's eastern border, with important eastern satrapies such as Media being lost to the nascent Parthian Empire. Because the Seleucid Empire was pretty big, but they couldn't manage everything at once. So they started to lose certain portions of it, like we just read here. In 147 BC, Demetrius II, Nicator, the young son of Demetrius I, began a campaign to overthrow Ballas, and civil war resumed. Alexander's ally, Ptolemaic king Ptolemy VI Philometor, moved troops into Coal, Syria, to support Alexander, but then switched sides and threw his support behind Demetrius II. At the Battle of the Oneporus River in Syria, he was defeated by Ptolemy VI and died shortly afterwards. So I believe this is also covered in First Maccabees, the 10th chapter. But just a bit of background concerning this Alexander that is mentioned here in First Maccabees, First Maccabees, the 10th chapter. I don't know if I said a different chapter earlier, but First Maccabees 10. So he comes, right? This guy, Alexander. And it says here, verse 2, now when King Demetrius heard thereof, so this is Demetrius the First, Soter, heard thereof, he gathered together an exceeding great host and went and fought against him, went forth against him to fight. Moreover, Demetrius sent letters unto Jonathan with loving words, so as he magnified him. For he said, let us make peace with him before he join with Alexander against us. So Demetrius was afraid that now if Jonathan and the Jews joined forces with Alexander, he would take over his kingdom. So he says, yeah, let's send peace, let's go and make peace with them. And that way we can, because if they join forces, we're done. Else he will remember all the evils that we have done against him and against his brethren and his people. See, so he's like, if we don't go and make peace with him now, they're going to see this as a great opportunity to join forces with our enemies because of the things we did to them. Wherefore, he gave him authority to gather together an host. This is Demetrius giving authority and power to Jonathan, trying to get on his good side, to gather an host and to provide weapons that he might aid him in battle. He commanded also that the hostages that were in the tower should be delivered him, being those that Maccabees, which that's the actual correct pronunciation, I looked it up. Maccabees had put in the tower, the hostages that he put there should be released from that Acra, that fortress that was in Jerusalem. Then came Jonathan to Jerusalem and read the letters in the audience of all the people, and of them that were in the tower, who were sore afraid when they heard that the king had given him authority to gather together an host. Whereupon they of the tower delivered their hostages unto Jonathan, and he delivered them unto their parents. This done, Jonathan settled himself in Jerusalem, and began to build and repair the city. And he commanded the workmen to build the walls and the Mount Zion, and about with square stones for fortification, and they did so. So to rebuild the walls, to basically build walls all around that region as a defense. Then the strangers that were in the fortresses which Maccabees had built fled away. They saw that things weren't going to go in their favor, so they retreated while they could. Insomuch as every man left his place and went into his own country. Only at Bethsura certain of those that had forsaken the law and the commandments remained still, for it was their place of refuge. So there was nowhere else they could run to. So they they went and holed up over there. Now when King Alexander had heard what promises Demetrius had sent unto Jonathan, when also it was told him of the battles and noble acts which he and his brethren had done, Jonathan that is, and of the pains that they had endured. So when he was informed and briefed on the attempts of Demetrius to win Jonathan over, also how valiant the Hasmonean family was, and the things they had done, and how the sufferings that they had gone through at the hand of Demetrius, he said, oh, okay. He said, shall we find such another man? We're not going to find another opportunity like this. This is the perfect case for us. Because he already has bad blood with this guy. They're strong and valiant people. Oh, this is amazing. Now, therefore, we will make him our friend and confederate. Upon this, he wrote a letter and sent it unto Jonathan, according to these words, saying, King Alexander to his brother Jonathan sendeth greeting. Now, it wasn't his actual brother, but it's a way of, trying to gain favor, right? It's a way of figure of speech. We have heard of thee that thou art a man of great power, and meet to be our friend. Wherefore now this day we ordain thee to be the high priest of thy nation, and to be called the king's friend. And therewithal he sent him a purple robe and a crown of gold, and required thee to take our part and keep friendship with us. So he's like, look, we're giving you the authority, we're giving you the power, you're going to be the high priest, and you side with us. So in the 7th month of the 160th year, at the feast of the tabernacles, Jonathan put on the holy robe and gathered together forces and provided much armor. Whereof when Demetrius heard, he was very sorry, and said, what have we done, that Alexander hath prevented us in making amity with the Jews to strengthen himself? So, damn, this is not good. This is not good. Because now the one thing they feared is what's happening. I also will write unto them words of encouragement, and promise them dignities and gifts, that I may have their aid. So he's like, look, let's sweeten up the pot a bit more. He sent unto them therefore to this effect. King Demetrius unto the people of the Jews sendeth greeting. Whereas ye have kept covenants with us, and continued in our friendship, not joining yourselves with our enemies, we have heard thereof, or hereof, and are glad. So he's like, he prefixes it with, oh, we're so glad due to your loyalty. We know you people are so loyal, you wouldn't switch sides on us or anything like that. Wherefore now continue ye to be faithful unto us, and we will well recompense you for the things ye do in our behalf. And will grant you many immunities and give you rewards. So what you see going on here is basically now two sides of a civil war of the Seleucid Empire, vying for the support of Israel. And now do I free you, and for your sake I release all the Jews from tributes and from the customs of salt, that's the salt tax, and from crown taxes or tribute that were to be paid, royal tributes that were to be paid to the king. We didn't have to pay that anymore. And from that which appertaineth unto me, to receive of the third part of the seed like the crops, and the half of the fruit of the trees I release it from this day forth, so that they shall not be taken of the land of Judea, nor of the three governments which are added thereunto, out of the country of Samaria and Galilee. So Judea, Samaria, Galilee, right? The different uh, uh, governments, as he called it, they don't have to pay any taxes or anything of that sort from this day forth forevermore. Let Jerusalem also be holy and free, with the borders thereof, both from tenths, which is tithes, and tributes. They don't got to pay nothing. They're good. And as for the tower which is in Jerusalem, I yield up authority over it and give the high priest, that he may set in it such men as he shall choose to keep it. So, because remember, Antiochus built that fortress in there. So they set up that fortress in Jerusalem. They had control over it. He's saying, "Look, I relinquish all that to you. You can do with it as you want." Moreover, I freely set at liberty every one of the Jews that were carried captives out of the land of Judea into any part of my kingdom. And I will that all my officers remit the tributes even of their cattle. So they're going to get back all the stuff. They don't got to give any more tribute. Anybody that was sent captive into any foreign land in this kingdom, they're free. Furthermore, I will that all the feasts and Sabbaths and new moons and solemn days, and the 3 days before the feast, and the 3 days after the feast shall be all of immunity and freedom for all the Jews in my realm. So nobody is to intervene or bother or hinder any Israelites concerning this. Also, no man shall have authority to meddle with or to molest, which is to harass or trouble any of them in any matter of the Israelites, of the Jews. I will further that there be enrolled among the king's forces about 30,000 men of the Jews, whom unto whom pay shall be given, as belongeth to all the king's forces. So he's like, in addition to that, I want you to send me 30,000 men that can be in my army, and I'll pay them. And of them some shall be placed in the king's strongholds, of whom also some shall be set over the king's affairs of the kingdom. I'm going to put some of them in high positions, which are of trust. And I will that their overseers and governors be of themselves. And so I'm not gonna put heathens over you. Your governors, your overseers, they will be Israelites themselves. And that they live after their own laws, even as the king hath commanded in the land of Judea. And concerning the 3 governments that are added to Judea from the country of Samaria, let them be joined with Judea, that they may be reckoned to be under one. So basically they would be sub governments under Judea. Judea would be the head, and Samaria, Galilee, and those regions would be under. Nor bound to obey other authority other than the high priest. So he was given a lot of power here to Jonathan, who had been appointed high priest at this point, and probably being the precedent for that system that was set up going into the New Testament, where you had a lot of you had the high priest and almost having like the highest authority next to a king, but we couldn't have kings. As for Ptolemaeus and the land pertaining thereto, which Ptolemaeus was a region in Israel, I give it as a free gift to the sanctuary at Jerusalem for the necessary expenses of the sanctuary. Moreover, I give every year 15,000 shekels of silver out of the king's accounts from the places appertaining. So in addition, every year I'm going to give 15,000 shekels from the king's treasuries for Israel. And all the overplus which the officers paid not in as in former time, from henceforth shall be given toward the works of the temple. So any extra costs or tributes that were not paid, when they are paid, they will be sent to basically to Jerusalem for the works of the temple, and not into the king's treasury. And beside this, the 5,000 shekels of silver which they took from the uses of the temple out of the accounts year by year, even those shall be released. So they had set up a system to where I believe Second Maccabees goes more in depth in a lot of the events of First Maccabees, and it explains likely some of these customs that were set up. But the funds and the amounts that were taken, right, from the temple, because remember, you're sacrificing animals, the shoe bread, the materials, the maintenance of the temple, it costs money. So the money that was taken or withheld from the work of the temple, he's saying here, would be released back because they appertain to the priests that minister. And whosoever they be that flee unto the temple at Jerusalem, or be within the liberties hereof, being indebted unto the king. So if anybody is indebted unto the king and they flee to Jerusalem, or for any other matter, let them be at liberty, they'll be considered free. And all that have all all that they have in my realm. For the building also and the repairing of the works of the sanctuary, expenses shall be given of the king's account. So any work that needs to be done concerning the temple or the sanctuary, the king will handle that. Yea, and for the building of the walls of Jerusalem and the fortifying thereof round about, expenses shall be given out of the king's accounts, also, or as also for the building of the walls of Judea. Now when Jonathan and the people heard these words, they gave no credit unto them, nor received them, because they remembered the great evil that he had done in Israel, for he had afflicted them very sore. So they remembered all the wickedness that this guy, Demetrius, did unto them. They were like, we don't believe you, man. Get that out of here. We know exactly what you're trying to do. You take us for fools. But with Alexander, they were well pleased, because he was the first that entreated of true peace with them, and they were confederate with him always. So they ended up going with Alexander instead of Demetrius. Then gathered King Alexander great forces and camped over against Demetrius. And after the two kings had joined battle, Demetrius' host fled, but Alexander followed after him and prevailed against them. And he continued the battle very sore until the sun went down, and that day was Demetrius slain. Afterward, Alexander sent ambassadors to Ptolemy, king of Egypt, with a message to this effect. So Alexander now is the reigning king, the Seleucid king. He defeats Demetrius the first, and now he's trying to make a league with Ptolemy. So he sends this message: for as much as I am come again to my realm, and am set in the throne of my progenitors, and have gotten the dominion, and overthrown Demetrius, and recovered our country. For after I had joined battle with him, both he and his host was discomfited by us, so that we sit in the throne of his kingdom. So when I came back, I basically just took him out of power, and now that kingdom is mine. Now therefore let us make a league of amity together, and give me now thy daughter to wife. So a treaty through marriage, and I will be thy son-in-law, and will give both thee and her according to thy dignity. So I'm gonna give you gifts accordingly. Then Ptolemy the king gave answer, saying, Happy be the day wherein thou didst return into the land of thy fathers, and sattest in the throne of their kingdom. Oh, this what a good day it is. I'm so glad. And now will I do to thee as thou hast written. Meet me therefore at Ptolemais, that we may see one another. For I will marry my daughter to thee according to thy desire. So Ptolemy went out of Egypt with his daughter Cleopatra, and they came on to Ptolemais in the 162nd year. Showing you that, for a good, especially around these times, a lot of marriages were really just political. It wasn't about, oh, how do I feel about her? Does she look good? And no. Where King Alexander meeting him, he gave unto him his daughter Cleopatra, and celebrated her marriage at Ptolemais with great glory, as the manner of kings is. Now King Alexander had written unto Jonathan that he should come and meet him, who thereupon went honorably to Ptolemais. So Jonathan was invited to their wedding, where he met the two kings, and gave them and their friends silver and gold and many presents, and found favor in their sight. At that time, certain pestilent fellows of Israel, men of a wicked life, they just never cease, assembled themselves against him to accuse him But the king would not hear them. So they came in there, they try, oh no, this Jonathan, no, you gotta watch out for Jonathan. Hey, he's this, he's that. He said, look, bro, cease. Yea, more than that, the king commanded to take off his garments and clothe him in purple. And they did so. And that purple was like a high, being clothed in purple signified a high ranking authority. So it was an honor whenever they would do that to somebody. And he made him sit by himself and said, should be unto his princes, go with him into the midst of the city and make proclamation that no man complain against him of any matter, and that no man trouble him for any matter or cause. So you better watch out not to speak against him. Now when his accusers saw that he was honored according to the proclamation and clothed in purple, they fled all away. So they were like, shit, we about to be in deep trouble because now he got immunity. So the king honored him and wrote him among his chief friends and made him a duke and partaker of his dominion. Afterward, Jonathan returned to Jerusalem with peace and gladness. Furthermore, in the 165th year came Demetrius, son of Demetrius, out of Crete into the land of his fathers. So now you had Alexander Ballas that ends up killing Demetrius the first Soter. That Demetrius' son, Demetrius the second Nicator, is the one who now basically comes on the scene. So it says here, Demetrius the second Nicator was one of the sons of Demetrius the first Soter. His mother may have been Laodice the fifth, as Laodice the fifth, as was the case with his brother Antiochus the seventh, right? Seventh, Sidetes. Demetrius ruled the Seleucid Empire for 2 periods, separated by a number of years of captivity in Hyrcania in Parthia. First from September 145 BC to July/August 138, so on and so forth. So this is the one that comes. This is the Demetrius we're talking about here. So he pulls up, verse 68, whereof when King Alexander heard tell, he was right sorry and returned into Antioch. Because now he's like, damn, now this guy's about to come and he's going to try and take the kingdom. He's mad. I killed his father. Shit. Then Demetrius made Apollonius the governor of Seleucia. Seleucia is another way of saying Coal Syria, which goes back to the Hebrew Kal Syria, which means all Syria. So it's just referring to that region of Syria. His general, who gathered together a great host and camped in Jamnia, and sent unto Jonathan the high priest, saying, Thou alone liftest up thyself against us, and I am laughed to scorn for thy sake, and reproached. And why dost thou vaunt thy power against us in the mountains? So basically, like, who the hell do you think you are? You know, because Jonathan sided with Alexander, remember, against Demetrius the first, the father of this Demetrius the second. Now therefore, if thou trustest in thine own strength, come down to us in the plain field, and there let us try the matter together. For with me is the power of the cities. Meaning, you think you're so big and bad. Why don't you come down here and and let's engage in this war and see what's going on there. Ask and learn who I am, and the rest that take our part, and they shall tell thee that thy foot is not able to fight in thine own land, or in their own land. In other words, he's saying, go and find out who I am, and you'll understand who you're really dealing with over here. So this guy already comes in there talking proudly. Wherefore now thou shalt not be able to abide the horsemen, and so great a power in the plain, where is neither stone nor flint nor place to flee onto. So he's saying, I got you cornered. Come out here and face me, because you think you're this super strong Jonathan, right? I got all these armies, I got all these horsemen, and if you try to flee, there's nowhere for you to go. So when Jonathan heard these words of Apollonius, he was moved in his mind, and choosing 10,000 men, he went out of Jerusalem, where Simon his brother met him for to help him. And he pitched his tents against Joppa, but they of Joppa shut him out of the city, because Apollonius had a garrison there. So Apollonius set up a garrison in Joppa, and because of that, the people of the city refused to let Jonathan in. Then Jonathan laid siege unto it, whereupon they of the city let him in fear, and so Jonathan won Joppa. Whereof, when Apollonius heard, he took 3,000 horsemen with a great host of footmen, and went to Azotus, which is Ashdod, as one that journeyed, and therewithal drew him forth into the plain, because he had a great number of horsemen in whom he put his trust. So he came in there with armies and horsemen ready to go against Jonathan. Then Jonathan followed him to Azotus, where the armies joined battle. Now Apollonius had left 1,000 horsemen in ambush, and Jonathan knew that there was an ambushman behind him, for they had compassed his host and cast darts at the people from morning till evening. But the people stood still, as Jonathan had commanded them, and so the enemy's horses were tired. Then brought Simon forth his host, and set them against the footmen, for the horsemen were spent, who were discomfited by him, and fled. Right, meaning the horsemen, they were tired. The horsemen also, being scattered in the field, fled to Azotus, and went into Beth Dagon, their idol's temple, for safety. But Jonathan set fire on Azotus and the cities round about it, and took their spoils, and the temple of Dagon with them, that were fled into it, he burned with fire. Thus there were burned and slain with the sword well nigh 8,000 men. And from thence Jonathan removed his host and camped against Ascalon, which is Ashkelon, where the men of the city came forth and met him with great pomp. After this returned Jonathan and his host unto Jerusalem, having many spoils. Now when King Alexander heard these things, he honored Jonathan yet more, and sent him a buckle of gold, as the use is to be given to such as are of the king's blood. He gave him also Acheron, and with the borders thereof in possession. And that brings us to the end of the book of 1 Maccabees, the 10th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.